Arsenal have beaten Tottenham in that new ground. In other news, water is wet. And what a win that is for Arsenal. A brilliant defensive performance for them. It was everything that they needed it to be. Gabriel, sensational. Saliba, outrageously good. And we must take a moment now. We really must acknowledge the contribution to Arsenal of Nico Jova. He really is getting everything right. He is at the epicenter of so many good things that Mikel Arteta's Arsenal are doing. It's a fantastic contribution from him, and it really is the perfect day for Arsenal Football Club. The performance wasn't particularly inspiring. The performance at various points was fairly neck and neck, but nothing matters. In certain games of football, it is about the manager's ideology. It is about making sure that you stamp your authority on the ground. The possession stats in certain games do actually matter. But in a derby of this magnitude, off the back of dropping points to Brighton, in the week where you launch yourselves into the Champions League with Manchester City waiting for you at the end of that week, nothing matters. Beating Tottenham is all that matters. Accruing the 3 points is all that matters. Getting back to winning ways is all that matters. And Arsenal did that. And I really don't think that enough people are acknowledging it for what it is. I genuinely believe that it's a sensational result for Arsenal, a seminal moment in the season. Because if it hadn't have gone their way, if they hadn't have dug deep and found the way to victory, it would have been a disaster for their title aspirations. It's a statement victory today, and Arsenal should be over the moon. They desperately needed a win today, and they got one. But you know when you desperately need a win? The last thing in the world you want when you are so desperate for a win is to go to the home of the team that despise you, to go to the home of the team that are so desperate to take points off you, to go to the home of the team that will do anything to derail your momentum, and to go to the home of the team that will do everything within their power to make sure that they beat you. It is Arsenal's most difficult away day of the season. In a very specific way, I see this as their most difficult game. Of course, on the pitch, it's far more difficult going to Anfield or Man City or various other places. But this is the most intense. Arsenal Football Club, for the fans, for the players, it's never more of a gauntlet. It's never more intense. They will never feel more despised than they do at that stadium. And yet, they make it their home. I was on the tube today, on the Victoria line, Arsenal fans singing constantly about winning the league at White Hart Lane. And that's what they do. They just seem to be so much better than Tottenham. And they have made this new ground their own. They have won 3 times at this new ground in a row. They've gone to this new stadium and won 3 times in a row. Ange Postecoglou really does need to hang his head in shame, because that is totally and utterly unacceptable. And let's remember the context in which Arsenal have done it. Not only did they have to win today, but they had to do it without the heart of their midfield. They had to do it in a way where Mikel Arteta needed to reimagine his team. He needed to redefine his system. And on some level, Mikel Arteta has done that. It's so impressive. He has demonstrated a pragmatism that I wasn't sure he was capable of demonstrating. You know, to go into a game against Tottenham without Martin Odegaard, without Declan Rice, could in theory leave Arsenal vulnerable. And with that in mind, how pitiful were Tottenham? How did Tottenham not make it count when they are playing the B side of that midfield? You know, I think that Arteta has done a wonderful job at Arsenal. It's annoying quite how well he's done. But on some level, you could argue that he has been lucky. Not necessarily lucky with results, not necessarily lucky in games. I'm not talking about that. I just mean in one area he has been incredibly lucky, and that is injuries. If you look at the team that he put out last season, it was an incredibly stable team. Declan Rice played virtually every game. Saliba, virtually every game. Gabriel, virtually every game. Ben White, 35 out of 38 games. Like, they had a very stable team. Midfield and defence was so stable, and that is why they managed to have this protection. That is why they managed to have the most miserly defence in the league. Suddenly, it's all a little bit up in the air. It's a completely revised midfield, and it didn't really leave them vulnerable at all. It's got to be so frustrating for Tottenham that they failed to capitalise on their biggest game of the season against a team that was a little bit all over the place. Arteta, you have to acknowledge, got it right on so many levels. We've already acknowledged the contribution of Jova. And again, the winning goal, what happens? It's a set piece. It is a set piece, a close range bullet header from Gabriel. Where on earth were the Tottenham defenders? At some point, Ange Postecoglou needs to take some responsibility for this. If you are constantly conceding goals from set pieces, you are not doing your homework on the training ground. Equally, if you are constantly a threat from set pieces and constantly scoring goals from set pieces, you are doing your work on the training ground. The entire point of the week is to get ready for those moments. It is such a cheap way to concede the winning goal in a North London derby. And Tottenham, for that reason, really should hang their head in shame. Like, the fault lays at the very top. This is a Postecoglou problem. Look, don't get me wrong. Christian Romero was far too weak. And forlornly trying to pretend that he was fouled was pathetic. But there is no way that Gabriel, one of the biggest threats from an Arsenal set piece, should have the freedom of the 6-yard box to go up totally unchallenged for a header in a game of that magnitude. At one point or another, it goes from being Romero's man to being anyone's man. And there were far too many players simply watching. Solanke watching, Vicario watching, nobody taking responsibility. At some point, look, Romero should hang his head in shame. Got it so wrong. But at some point, it becomes attack the ball, defend your box with everything you've got. And there was no real desperation for Tottenham to keep that ball out of the back of the net. Whereas, you could feel it. Arsenal were doing everything within their power to make sure that they scored. The Arsenal fans behind that goal going potty. They were so desperate for it. And it can't be a coincidence that 3 of Arsenal's last 4 goals against Tottenham have come from corners. One team is doing their homework. The other team is quite simply not doing their homework. And it now means that Arsenal have won 3 matches in a row at Tottenham. Postecoglou, it's so bad. I mean, there were boos at the end. And I don't think they're misplaced. Tottenham have won 3 out of 11 Premier League games. 1 game all season. 3 out of 11. And for some reason, we don't talk about it. I've been talking on Twitter a lot about Postecoglou, and I stand by every single word. But what a result it is for Arsenal. And it's at the start of a very big week for them. Atalanta travelling to Bergamo. That is going to feel huge. Massive game on Thursday. And then Man City on the weekend. A massive result. Statement from Arteta. And I tell you what, Arteta should be very proud tonight because he has proved that he could make it work. He has proved that he is capable of redefining himself, reimagining his team, juggling his squad, coming up with a new system, all whilst maintaining the brilliance of the previous system. You know, it's all very well changing things, but you don't want to change it in a way that maybe makes Bukayo Saka less effective. Change it in a way that maybe destabilises the back line, compensating the midfield but making the back line weaker. Nothing even close to that occurred. Bukayo Saka, yet again, just truly brilliant, wasn't he? Still outrageously good. 4th assist of the season, clutch. That's what Bukayo Saka is. Turns up when it most matters. And he's now got to be one of the most dependable players in the league. He is that good. He is really that good. Never misses. Sensational from him. And I think that we also have to acknowledge that the way that that Arteta managed to find answers is also very impressive. You know, this new formation, this kind of clever temporary solution, like a workaround. It was like a 4-2-2-2, wasn't it? And Leandro Trossard and Kai Havertz were sort of part of a box midfield, but also ended up as a 2 frontline man attack. Very clever indeed from Mikel Arteta, and there are so many positives. I thought Timber was brilliant, you know. I don't think he'll get the headlines, obviously. Saliba. So I feel like Saliba often nicks the headlines. Gabriel should get the headlines, scoring a winner. Like, he's so threatening in both boxes. You know, he sticks his head on everything. So threatening in both boxes, but also, that's got to be Timber's best performance in an Arsenal top, isn't it? Can't really remember him playing better than that. Gabriel, man of the match. I thought Raya, particularly in that first half, was also really strong. So today is just massive result for Arsenal. But what does it tell us about Tottenham? It genuinely does tell us that there are major problems there. And Ange Postecoglou is getting it wrong. I don't think it's spoken about enough. I feel like because he does seem to be a media darling, it isn't really flagged. But let's face it, he is making a pig's ear of it at Tottenham. And the Tottenham fans were right to boo. I'm actually going to do a deep dive on Ange Postecoglou. I'm going to do a proper video. Do you think I should? Let me know in the comments. Do you think a proper video on Postecoglou and Tottenham and where it's going wrong? But 3 wins in 11 Premier League games. 1 win all season. It is laughable how average he is. And yet again, they haven't turned up in their biggest game of the season, conceding from set pieces so many times. And think about Postecoglou, what he's done to that team. In the transfer market, so many average players. Brennan Johnson today, totally woeful. Woeful. Dom Solanke, completely ineffective. No real structure to the team. James Maddison, invisible. How many signings have been made from Championship clubs that have now turned Tottenham into a fairly average team? Really isn't good enough. And he has spent a lot of money. 60 million quid on Solanke last month. I mean, what? In less than 2 years, they spent 305 million quid. Just seen a text with my mates just text me that. So yeah, it's not good. But I will do a video on Postecoglou if you think that's a good idea. But today, annoyingly, belongs to Arsenal. What a result for them. Sets us up perfectly, doesn't it? Going into that game against Manchester City. Let's see how it goes. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe that my take on Postecoglou is too harsh? Do you think that Arteta deserves nothing but praise? Do you believe that this result will be a seminal moment in the season and Arsenal are, in fact, deeply entrenched in a title race? I said I think they'll win the league at the beginning of the season. Seem nothing to change my mind so far. Thanks for watching. Please do click subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in a bit. Ta-da.